Yeah, so obviously my name's John Scott, and I'm currently running Powered4 TV, which is a wrestling streaming platform that houses, we house up to about over 30 promotions currently, most of it in the British wrestling scene, but we also cater abroad as well. So we've got a couple from, we've got one from Chicago, one from Florida, one recently from North Carolina that we've just taken on. And then in Europe, we've got some as well within the Netherlands and Belgium currently at the moment. And we just house all those great promotions. Plus, we've got the media side of it as well, which is like a whole thing to itself. Obviously, guys like yourself that concentrate and mainly focus on British wrestling, which we're quite interested in as a niche market.
Yeah, so how did it all come about? Where did the idea or the desire to start Powered4 come from?
Well, basically, at the time, I was just doing a podcast called WrestleLine, and I'd been doing that for about 4 to 5 years, and we sort of started to go out and about. We started to do media at lots of events like Ring of Honor when they came over, and Progress and the like. So we were getting out there doing more stuff, and then there was a platform at the time which was called Turnbuckle TV, which was already set up, and it had all this, had about 15 promotions on it at the time, mainly flagship by TNT Extreme Wrestling. And when we picked that up, I was like, blimey, there's all this massive British wrestling going on that I didn't really know about, and I wouldn't have known about unless I'd seen it on this VOD. So it literally got to a stage last year, actually, when we set the company up during COVID, right in the midst of it. So it was like June. There was nothing going on, and the guy that ran Turnbuckle was looking to kind of do something different with what he already had. Like, he already had a great product, but he wanted to sort of take it a little bit further, and we just decided to sort of collaborate together, and we ended up forming Powered4 TV, and we sort of took the media plus the video on demand service and sort of incorporated them into one. And I think the idea for me was like I was getting all around to all these great independent British wrestling, but like I wasn't able to really show people what I was there. You know, when I was doing an interview with a wrestler, it wasn't like the people at home could actually see, well, where do you go and watch their stuff? Like at that time, a good couple of years, 3 years ago, there wasn't as many, I'd say, things getting recorded. Whereas now it's like a lot of places, even stuff you wouldn't expect with 20 people sitting there, are all getting recorded, even if it's just for the wrestlers to watch back afterwards. So, that was basically how it all came about. And as I said, we started in June. People said I was mad for starting the business then, probably was. And we only had like one event, I think, within 8 months, which was from Chicago at the time, before obviously things opened up across the pond where we are. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. Now I'm more busier than ever because obviously we took all these promotions on, signing them left, right and centre without really sort of knowing how that would be when all wrestling comes back. So we're seeing that effects now, but I'm not complaining.
No, of course. I was going to say it must be sort of like quite busy, and that must be quite nice though to be that busy, but to know that you're that busy, to know that there's the market for it and people want to get involved in it as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's been nice because we've had sort of promotions reaching out to us now. So it's like, whereas before we were kind of going out and sort of inquiring quite a lot, we've actually had promoters come to us and, you know, requests coming on the platform, which is great. I mean, with Powered4, the difference between kind of us and I guess other video on demands, like when we look at our marketplace, I think I'll give a shout out to Simon Hill, who commentates over at TNT. Kind of said this great line the other week on one of the shows, and he said we're the Brit Rest, the Netflix of Brit Rest, because that's how we are. Because basically we just kind of put everybody on one subscription, so you're not signing up to just one promotion. You get the whole stack. So if you sign a subscription, you get 30 plus promotions, whereas a lot of our competitors at the time were kind of sitting there alone, charging around sort of £5 to £6 a month. And they kind of were saying to me, like, we're not really getting the numbers. Like, how can we improve? Especially if you're a lower sort of coming up promotion. You know, if you're just starting out and you're wanting to grow, it's really difficult to get those early numbers. I mean, you might get your hardcore audience, but it's hard to get exposure out there. And you've only really got a couple of options. You can go the YouTube route, which is good. But again, like a lot of people think, well, because there's so many millions of people that watch YouTube, I'll get millions of people. But it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So it's a difficult process to work out. Like, we have a YouTube channel. We know how difficult it is to monetize it and all the rest of it and adverts. So what we sort of did is we sort of said to those sort of promotions up and coming, we was like, well, look, if you come on with these bigger names, the likelihood is while other subscribers who might subscribe for like TNT or FNW, they might just come across your promotion when ordinarily they probably wouldn't have. But it's kind of like that whole thing of just convenience being in one place.
Yeah.
So to speak, so.
Yeah, for sure. And you must have been glad in terms of, you mentioned sort of coming across Turnbuckle and sort of being exposed to more Brit Rest that way. Were you, when you set this up and then when, you went out to companies and now companies coming to you, were you surprised at just how much there is out there Brit Rest wise? Because obviously people know, the bigger companies, say your Progresses, your Rev Pros, your TNTs, your Eves, but there's so many promotions in the UK. Like, there's just a wealth of talent out there.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy to think about it. I mean, honestly, with it, like, I think I was trying to dot everywhere on a map the other day of where all our promotions are. We got a nice spread that kind of range from north to south to the Midlands, but there is just a gigantic amount of wrestling. I mean, in the UK and promotions, I've got to be honest with you. When I first started to get within British wrestling, which was back in the early days, I mean, I'm talking FWA days, early 2000s. That's when I was a fan of British wrestling. That was kind of the only kid in town. I mean, you had All Star, which run the circuits, obviously, but FWA, if you wanted that sort of adult mainstream wrestling, doing something a little bit different, FWA was the place I would go to. But now you look at it and you're thinking, blimey, like, I've only got to go up the road. It's not like I've got to travel miles and miles to see it. But, with that, I mean, I think from our point of view, it's kind of good and bad, because obviously we do have to do a little bit of due diligence. We do have to find out what this, especially if they're a new promotion. I mean, you see that often a lot recently, where you get a lot of new promotions. They have a wonderful poster, and then we kind of get down to the nitty and gritty, and it's like, okay, we haven't got a venue yet. We haven't got wrestlers yet. And I'm like, okay, well, you need to come back to us after that. We need to see what we're getting. But I think overall it's in a very healthy state, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned sort of due diligence there. I mean, in terms of, I guess things like speaking out as well, have you had to make changes in that way? Be extra careful again about what promotions you're showing, maybe even what matches you're showing, depending on people that may have been named in and stuff like that. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that was obviously when we set up, wasn't too long after that speaking out movement came about, and I had to really sit down and think about a lot of the terms and what's in our agreement. So we kind of changed them, making sure that there's certain criteria that are met. We like to see policies. The good thing with us is because we're wrestling people, yes, you could go on any demand and they probably wouldn't ask too much about certain things like policies, and especially if it's like a wrestling school involved, things like that. They probably wouldn't need those kind of documents. But with us being wrestling people, we kind of felt responsible that we should be doing those extra things and adding into the criteria certain things that you'd have to meet. And obviously we can now go out and about as well. So we got like hands-on people at the events as well, which is a great added bonus to that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does the process work in terms of, getting these, events live on Powered 4, in terms of who sends you the footage and how often, like how soon after do you get the footage, and who does the editing? What is the entire process that...
The moment it comes to us and they say like, well, we don't normally have comms on our events, we can offer them and say, right, we've got such and such who will do it. We've got Sonny Garner, who's with us. We've got another guy called Josh Porter that does commentary. So we can get those guys involved. Obviously, you've had Jess on your show, who's been fantastic with us. She's a great ambassador for us. She's up and down all over the place representing Powered4, who does a lot of the marketing stuff as well for us. So yeah, it's pretty much we try to get a nice turnaround. I mean, the big thing, it's not too much with some of the sort of independent shows that, you know, maybe haven't got that mainstream audience just yet. It's not as big of a deal about the turnaround, but I think for sort of our major ones, we sort of try and do a 10-day turnaround of when the event's gone out, and it's literally up there.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely, and that's what's so important, isn't it? Because I mean, well, obviously, somewhere like America, where there's so many promotions and it's a lot bigger country, then it's a lot more spread out. But even in the UK, when there's so many promotions, and say, you know, like I live in London, and it would be great, you know, if I could regularly get to places like Catch or TNT or stuff like that. But obviously, that's just not feasible. So it's great to have somewhere where you can be able to watch those shows and still see all the great wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, like a live event is always going to be the best thing in my opinion, like to go to a show. But then I think there's like, you know, if you go to a show, sometimes there's a different experience to watch it back on Powered4 TV or like any video on demand, because it's kind of like if you go to WWE's events. I mean, I remember the first ever live event I ever went to as an adult. So I didn't really get it as much when I was a kid, but as an adult, I went in. I think this one was in New York at the time. I think it was a SummerSlam, and I went in there, and it was just like there was something missing. And then I realised it was the commentators. It kind of threw me out, and it kind of took a lot of adjusting. Like, oh, you know, I'm not hearing everything. And there was a bit. I think it was the Brock. There was something with Brock Lesnar, but like the fans couldn't tell what happened, and the only way you could tell is if you were actually watching live. So it was like I had to get my phone out and check what people were saying to actually understand what the hell just happened, because everyone's just like, oh, what? So yeah, you get that different experience sometimes from a live show to then going back and listening to it, and obviously seeing all the different angles and all the rest of it. So it's kind of like two experiences, I would say. In that kind of thing. But you're right. I mean, if you can't, it's not that people can travel up and down the country all the time and watch these promotions. So it's a good opportunity to kind of see things like Catch Pro and TNT that's quite up north, and obviously stuff in the Midlands, depending on where you are. So
yeah, for sure, absolutely. And so, like you said, in terms of, there's a couple of things I wanted to, you know, get into as well regarding that. And the first is that you mentioned that, you know, at the start, it was you going out to promotions being like, this is who we are, we'd love to have your show on. And now it's more the other way around, where people are coming to you and being like, we'd love to be on your platform. How does all that work in terms of from the start to now, like whether it's you going to a promotion or them coming to you, what is the whole process of getting them set up on your platform?
Well, I mean, like I say, people can obviously come to, we've had I won't lie, we've had a lot of promotions come to us, but ones we've rejected because they're just not ready. And I think, you know, we have to be kind of somewhat picky. I mean, stuff without commentators isn't always a great watch, if I'm honest. And if you've just got like a dead cam set up, which there are a few that did that, and it's kind of like, okay, when you watch the dead cam stuff, it's like you're there watching over somebody's shoulder. Like, it's not kind of intimate enough. So it's kind of little improvements, but for the most part, a promoter will come to us, a promoter, and obviously we have an agreement lined out. A lot of our agreements are kind of adapted depending on who you are. I mean, different terms will come. We offer a 70-30 split, so that basically means that for every subscriber promoter gives us from that promotion, they get 70% back per subscriber per month.
So how does that work? Because I thought you said it was sort of like a bundle thing. So how do you sort of divvy it up in terms of various promotions, or is it all? So basically,
every promotion has a set code that they will give to their particular audience. Right. So they'll have a set code. Plus, we also give back on views. So if something's come on and it's like they haven't got a great subs number, but then all of a sudden they've got a particular show that's really doing well, and it's kind of like hitting the peak, then they'll also be rewarded for that as well in terms of views, which, you know, it's kind of good because it gives a bit of a goal, I think, for some of those other promotions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You put on the good show, you get the views, and you get rewarded from that.
Yeah, and we've had that before as well. Like, we've been quite surprised with some of the ones that have hit off, that have done that in the past. But yeah, it's basically a lot of negotiation, a lot of meetings, trying to find out what we can do for each other. I think the biggest challenge for us is obviously, you know, with 30 plus promotions, you're working with 30 plus promoters as well and beyond. And then you've got to try and get them to collaborate somewhat with each other, because obviously I say to a promoter, okay, like, you can advertise to your fans that, yes, they can go and watch you on demand as they were before, but the incentive is now not only do they get you, but they get all these other promotions. Now, for some promoters, they're like, hang on a minute, I don't want to talk about such and such, like, this is my stuff. So we have to kind of try and sort of sell that to them and say, like, but at the end of the day, the fans are going to love it, like, regardless. And I think you'd be naive to think, like, one fan only watches one particular product, especially in independent wrestling. You know, I have the WWE Network. I've got demands like with Progress, Rev Pro. So, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say Powered4 is the be-all, end-all. We know there's other great VODs out there and all the rest of it. We don't try and ignore the stuff like that. It's same as when we go and talk about our media. We don't just talk about the housed promotions. We talk about all British wrestling and everything across the world, because I've had it before where, like, oh no, let's just talk about us. And it's like, oh God, man, come on. Like,
that's the thing, isn't it?
Completely ignore something that's like straight in our face. No, like, I've never been like that. I'm just a wrestling fan in general. So, like, I've never shied away. I've always believed in my own product. So it's not something we've had to worry about. But yeah, those things are sort of the challenges with working with promoters. But also, you know, you build that relationship over time, and you know, you get a good rapport with people. And it's been nice. We've the thing with us as well, we're able to work with promotions in terms of enhancing their storyline. So if there's something going on, we can kind of do stuff on the platform where we might dive into a particular rivalry, and we kind of do it in a way that isn't saying, oh, like, haha, that's, you know, not real or whatever. We actually do, we incorporate storyline stuff with it, which is something a little bit different. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and that's something that as well, like you mentioned and Jess mentioned to us as well when she spoke to us, is the fact that you do that extra media stuff. You know, you do little, like, sort of snippets and different type of almost like show type things and features and things like that. And it's nice. It's something just a bit extra to, again, delve into maybe a certain promotion or a certain wrestler or certain other things that would just keep you coming back for more content.
Yeah, we've tried to do that from the get-go and trying to be separate away from everything else that's out there, because, like I say, a lot of the on-demand services, they're just sort of generic things you can put videos on. They're not niche towards wrestling or anything like that. So with us, we thought, well, we can really customize that experience. And being a wrestling fan, I kind of like, well, what would I like to see and how would I like to see it, sort of thing, is all in sort of my head. The great tech guys that we have on Powered4 TV, they're the real magicians that I haven't got a freaking clue about how they do all this stuff, because we sit in these meetings with these guys and I'm like, okay. And the funny thing is, they're not wrestling fans either. So they talk to me about all their, you know, passionate about. I talk about wrestling, but we're probably alien to each other. But it works very well with regards to, I'll say, like, could we have it like this and do it like that? And, you know, they'll either look at me like I'm crazy or, yeah, of course we can, type of thing.
Yeah, but that's also good as well, isn't it, to have that outside perspective, because that way you've got people working on it who aren't just looking at it from a fan's perspective. They're looking at it as, like, how can I get this product looking the best it can perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And both guys, they have, like, crazy jobs for these big software companies, and they kind of, I don't know what they think of wrestling in general. I'm sure they watch it secretly and don't tell me. But yeah, they're as passionate about how it looks. And we've been mentioned a few times now on some good like tech shows as well, which has been a nice little. I mean, it's just a completely different audience, obviously, that you're going to, but it's kind of cool because you'll get a good bit of feedback, and it's always interesting to see what outside people still the perception is of professional wrestling, and thinking like, oh, there's more than UE. There's this whole thing in the UK going on, and they've got a platform for it right now. So and like you say, it's good to have that perspective from an outside person for sure, definitely.
Yeah, and you mentioned expanding as well, like because you said you got a few promotions in America and things like that, and a couple in Europe. So is that a plan to sort of expand out furthermore? Is that something you'd like to do? Maybe go a bit further afield as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to look for some at the moment in Australia. It's got quite a good independent market going on. I mean, we were doing our research, and it's quite popular at the moment. It's really going off a bang out there at the moment. I think it's odd. It's often, I know people like to take a dump on WWE at times, but I always think back to Wembley '92 and what that sort of started in terms of, the projection on British wrestling at that time. World of Sport pretty much packed up. But for the independents, they all started booming in the 90s. People don't probably think that because obviously it wasn't filmed a lot. But people I speak to that were wrestling back then said business-wise, they were getting paid a shed loads because there wasn't as many about either. So it was more in demand. But I think from those early days, you look at the deal they did with Sky TV in the UK from that event, from the Wembley event, like just the whole thing it made. Now, similar thing happened in Australia, and people tell me since that ridiculous super show that Shawn Michaels come out of retirement for, with the bald head and all the rest of it, that it's really gone down a treat with the sort of, I guess, casual wrestling fans just wanting to have a little bit more, and all of a sudden independent wrestling has really started to pick up there. So in terms of expansion and things like that, we definitely want to look outside, more international. Japan is a big area as well that we're looking into currently. And I think furthermore, we've always had this desire to have possibly down the line an event which would be housed by us, Powered4, to sort of showcase, a variety of different promotions that we have on one show. That would be like a big get for us to do something like that as well. So lots of exciting things. Obviously, we can't do them all at once. But you never know where it's going to take you half the time with professional wrestling, I tell you.
For sure. And we talk about promotions because another promotion that you're involved in, sort of, for Powered4, but also away from that is DNA. So how did that all come about? How did you get involved in that, and how did that all start?
Well, I was doing the interviews at the time for WrestleLine, and I used to go up to DNA. I would be sent there by Turnbuckle, and they'd say, "Oh, like you get carte blanche at this place. They'll give you all the interviews you want." So I'm like, "Oh, great! I'll pack my stuff up, get down to Ipswich, and do that." And I was talking with the promoters quite a lot. There's Dave and Anthony that run it, and I was a big fan of it just because it was like a 2-hour show. It wasn't long, and it was kind of in and out, but it was very much like sort of driven storyline wise. And in UK wrestling, I like all wrestling, but I do miss sometimes like the backstage stuff and the sort of plant the seeds earlier to get rewarded a little bit later kind of thing. And they were doing that quite a lot. A lot of times in British wrestling, it's bell to bell storytelling, but this was something a little bit different. And obviously, before I'd started doing the podcasting stuff, I had been involved with wrestling before that. There was a time with the FWA in 2010. I think I was involved, the revamped version that came back. So I'd always done a little bit of producing for certain promotions in that regard, and creative and stories. And they just came out and they said like, "Oh, we've got this space to fill. How would you feel about coming back and doing that again?" And at first I was a little bit sort of, I was like, do I want to take that? Because again, I'm doing this and I'm wearing another hat doing this. I'm like, I don't want to give myself too much. But I took that on, and we've only done the one show at the moment, which was really good. Enjoyed it a lot, getting back involved with that. But that's just something I've always enjoyed on the side. I mean, as well as that, I'm doing colour commentating now as well for a few promotions. So I have to be careful because before I know it, there's just like I'm all over the place and I don't even know who the hell's talking to who. Because my colour commentator is kind of ego eccentric. Let's say that he's a very very heel-like character.
I was going to say, do you have to be careful with that in terms of, being a wrestling fan and wanting to do as much as possible business-wise as well, to not overbook yourself, to not overstretch yourself? Things come in, you're like, oh, I want to do that, but I shouldn't. Like, I've got to take a break, things like that.
Yeah, I've learned to do that over time. I think someone said to me, like, you're just wearing too many hats. Just focus on one thing. I think it was last year in February. This was before Powered 4, but like, I was doing the media stuff, and then I did this angle with Simon Miller where I smashed him up with a ladder at the end of a match. And at that point, I was thinking, like, God, I need to. What am I doing here? Am I media? Am I not? Like, I'm beating this guy up now. This wrestler, this is crazy, and then I'm doing angles. So you have to take kind of a step back and think what's going on. I mean. The thing is, it's like all the videos you see for Powered 4, that again, that's something I do myself. And then myself and Rich are basically the guys that do a lot of the stuff you'll see. Like, we don't have a huge staff team that sit there and do this stuff. We've got our full-time jobs as well, and then Powered 4 on top. So it's kind of like you only get so many hours. And then, it's like wrestling, when it's on in the UK, pretty much every weekend has got something somewhere. So it was only like a little while ago we had FNW and TNT on the same night on a Thursday, which is crazy.
Yeah, last week, wasn't it? Yeah.
And then, we're like, we've got a couple of guys at FNW, we've got representation at TNT, and you're kind of sitting back at home thinking like, oh God, what's being said, what's going on. And it's crazy, when things like that happen. But in a good way. But you definitely need time management is definitely key and crucial to this kind of thing. For sure.
And I was actually it's weird that you mentioned the Simon Miller thing, because first thing I brought up, I told one of my mates that we were having you on, and they were like, oh, didn't he beat up like the guy from YouTube? Because I hadn't seen that, and I was like, I'll ask him about that. I'm not sure, but how was that? Because obviously Simon as well, great wrestler, really coming up in his career, but another guy that sort of came through via a different platform, being known from something else.
We made up since he came on. He came onto my show, and we made up. I had to grovel. I'm glad it was done sharing a screen and not in person, but it was all good. We made up. But yeah, he's a fantastic guy. He's very helpful. He's one of the most helpful people out there in terms of doing the media stuff. Always gives great advice. But for him, he takes wrestling very serious. I don't think people realise sometimes. They see him as this YouTuber that does the ups and downs, and that's his thing. Like that's his. But in real honesty, he wants to really give wrestling full commitment, and I think only recently he's starting to get quite a lot of rewards for that. Like before, he was kind of doing. I think even he said it to me at one time as well. He found it was a bit sort of the comedy type angles he'd been booked in. But now I think people are seeing like, oh, this guy's serious, and obviously he's got like a huge following. So if I'm a promoter, I'm thinking, I want Simon Miller. Like he'd be my poster guy, because look at the amount of people he's got, even just on his own YouTube channel. It's crazy with that kind of thing. But yeah, he's a fantastic guy too. It's great sport.
I was going to say that's the thing, isn't it? Ultimately you want to give the wrestlers, you want to put the best wrestlers at the forefront. But again, it's it's a business where if someone's got that huge following, you want to have them on your show, because again, it's learning for them, and that's why Simon's been able to grow so much, is because people are having on, because ultimately, first of all, it's the name, and you can get the name in, but then he gets the experience from that. He becomes better, and then he becomes a star in his own right, away from the YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. Marketing is very, very key. I mean, not everyone kind of gets that. They kind of think, well, look, this guy is going to give me the best matches on the night, but he might not be that well known. And then you've got like this other problem of like, what do I show off the most? Because whether we like to admit it or not, I think if you're just a family of four that walk by a poster and that the thing is, image is everything in key, and it might only be 2 seconds they just look at it. But me as a kid, when I was growing up, I mean, certainly the bigger the guy, the better sometimes. Or if he had like a certain mean look, that would do it for me. So it depends what your market is. I mean, obviously, if it's adults, it's a little bit different because, again, you've got a niche audience that's already there in British wrestling. But I think if you're a family show, someone like Simon Miller is perfect because he not only fits that side of the family, but he also fits another area of his audience on YouTube. So you've got the best of both worlds with someone like him in that regard.
Yeah. So I guess looking back on 2021, obviously coming out of lockdown, and we had all these great promotions coming back, sort of new promotions starting up as well. Who would you say are sort of like, maybe in terms of either promotions and in terms of specific wrestlers, who you think, 2021 was like such a good year for them? Who would be the names that come to mind for you?
I think, I would say promotions-wise, who I've been really impressed with have been Catch Pro Wrestling, I think, for this year, because I think before lockdowns, they'd only done one event, and it was like the tournament thing. But since they've come back this year, they've been very popular, and not just popular where they're based, but when I go around, everybody seems to know Catch Pro Wrestling, which goes to show you, like, they've got, they're building very fast. So I would say they've sort of been, for us, the surprise, the breakout from a promotion in terms of Powered4. I think in regards to, there's so many talents.
I know, I'll put you on the spot a bit.
Narrow it down. I would say I've always been a big fan of Chantel Jordan, and she's now getting a lot of work in different places, different promotions, which is great. There's a tag team called The Rebellion, based in Essex, that I've always been a fan of. They've been doing some great stuff in sort of back end of the year, winning a lot of belts in places. But I think their stock's gone up quite a lot in terms of what they've been doing. I've loved sort of I'm always a big proponent of the Kings of the North. I always like those guys. They're men, not to be messed with, I think there's Alex Chambers that I've enjoyed as well. He wrestles at Full Force Wrestling, another great talent. I couldn't tell you one specific person, that's for sure. But I mean, obviously, guys like Chris Ridgway that are doing their craft in so many places currently. But I think in general, if you look at the whole scene as it is, you'd be hard pressed to say somebody's not doing that well if you're a current wrestler. I mean, I think in terms of like the amount of places to go and work, there's never been any more. So I think if you're a professional wrestler, there's spaces to be filled. I think people have sort of moved into those gaps and areas, what with NXT UK as well. So it's like there are always opportunities there to take those spots. And I think the only thing I've always been a little bit worried about, if anything was a worry for next year, as we're talking now, but in 2022, would be, I think for promotions, I think what they have to be careful of is and wrestlers as well, I suppose, is trying to still keep that identity, because I suppose sometimes you'll look at a wrestling card down in South and you think, okay, that's up there next week. But it kind of like, I don't have to travel as far to go and see that anymore. And everybody sometimes is doing either the same matches or they're using the same people. And sometimes you lose that identity quite quick. I would say that's the only thing that worries me slightly with British wrestling, the way it's going. But I think in the whole, you look at the production and stuff that they give you now, it's almost like, I don't know, I think when people say about, the mainstream stuff not being as good anymore, I think it's more that the independents have grown so much. We're not going into a gym hall where there's just a ring sitting there with nothing else, no lights or entrance music. I remember turning up to one place once. I tell the story all the time because it still makes me laugh to this day, but I got an invite to go to this show. I think it was about 2007. And I got in there. There was about 30 people sitting there. And then I was like, where's the ring? And they're like, that's the ring. literally, it was like 4 bins propped up with broomsticks as the turnbuckles, and this wiry bit of string kind of stuff. Wasn't rope at all, just going around. And that was a wrestling ring back then. God knows what the actual canvas was made of, but it looked like cardboard. And I think back to those days, and I'm like, well, we've come a long way.
Absolutely, for sure. And that's the thing, is something else you mentioned there that I wanted to sort of pick up on, because that is a slight concern. Even looking at it from a fan's point of view, we've had other wrestlers on who have talked about, mainly when they're talking about things like representation and diversity and stuff, they talk about, you look at match posters, match cards, and you can often see, loads of the same matches, loads of the same people. And obviously that's great for them, and it's great they're getting the work and the recognition. But is there, like you said, a sort of danger that with so many promotions already, loads of new ones coming in 2022 as well, there's like already 3 or 4 or 5 that I know of that are launching next year. Is there a danger, you think, that we could sort of oversaturate this market that we have? Because ultimately, if you see 2 people wrestling on a card one week, and then in a couple of weeks they're wrestling, 30 miles away from you on another card, but you've already got tickets to that show, you're probably not going to go 30 miles to see the same match again.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult how to find a solution as well, because if you're a wrestler and someone is paying you, top dollar, or going to pay you a little bit extra to come to a show that's maybe not as established as another, 9 times out of 10, the wrestler's always going to say, yeah. There's very few wrestlers that will keep themselves, some guys and girls, they'll basically stay, very much, okay, I'm only going to tailor to these audiences, and this is where I'm going to do my craft. Some other wrestlers might think to themselves, well, I want to sort of try something different in a different area, maybe a different audience, different fans. And I get that totally, but I think you're right. I mean, for me, you just see there, another 4 or 5 coming. I mean, they're coming out of our ear holes at the moment, with all these promotions. It does worry me a little bit, because I think it dilutes a lot of the good established promotions more than anything else. I really do. And, I don't think British wrestling on the independent scene is it's not something that should be coming incredibly expensive to go to get a ticket for, whether it's like a Rev Pro, Progress, or, FNW, whatever. Those tickets are quite, friendly, I think, to the independents. So if you want to keep going to these shows, you can do that. But there's only 2 ways of either adjusting this: either they start to put their money up and invest in only, almost giving them the roster they're using exclusive contracts over a certain period. But again, that's not cheap. But the only way they're going to make money to get that is to put their tickets up higher. That's one way of doing it. But the other way, I think, is just it's the wrestlers themselves to think, okay, I got to take a little bit more responsibility and think, do I need to be on every single day, twice a day sometimes, to get myself out there to make a decent earnings. And it's always a balancing act. I mean, you think it's thriving because there's all these promotions, but you might go to one promotion and it might just not be the standard that you've seen the week before, and that's it. You might have lost that fan for good in the bigger sense. So yeah, you do have to be careful, because, like I always say, with running a promotion, there's no sort of you don't need a qualification, you don't need a license to do these things. It's just literally someone shows up and says, okay, I've got a ring, and you're away. And it's kind of a dangerous thing as well, in a lot of respects. But that's the only thing that concerns me. But over time, over a longer period of time, I think it will all sort of filter out a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. And what about, as we sort of wrap things up, what about your hopes in terms of for Powered4 for the next year? Say if we were having this conversation in 12 months' time, what would constitute a good year for you guys in terms of ambitions and aims and what you want to get to?
For us, really, I mean, this year will be our first full year of wrestling. Obviously, at the start of 2021, we didn't have a light at the end of the tunnel too much. We still weren't sure when things were going to be coming back, and are there just going to be no fan shows? Which they're fantastic, but again, it's not for independent wrestling. It's kind of like there's no point doing it unless you can get fans there. In my opinion, so for us, it's kind of just, I think, small steps. I mean, nothing too crazy, but just to have all the great events. We've seen so much of the calendars that have already been announced ahead of time from some of the bigger promotions. So I'm really looking forward to getting all those on the platform. We'd certainly like to be building a little bit more with the international scene. That's for sure over the next 12 months. But for us, really, it's just, let's just get as much great wrestling on as we can from the promotions that we've already had, because we've been working with these guys for so long. I think it was only, October of last, which was 2021, would have been the first month where at that point we'd seen all our promotions at least put on one show or start a show since coming on Powered4 TV. And, we're looking at, we've gone from one event in 8 months to having now, we're on average, is about 12 every month. So it's a big difference, and it's kind of good. And they all run very regular. The one from North Carolina at the moment is our first weekly TV show, so they do a show every week, which is a different kind of thing altogether. But it's a good thing. It's like something we're looking into from other things, because I do think people enjoy that sort of like, almost like watching a TV show, binge watching some of the stuff, and that's what you can do. But I think that, and obviously just enhancing what we've got on the platform in terms of what we can offer the customer and the experience as a fan to see more stuff and watch it in different ways. We're certainly going to be looking at things where I think I can say this, but I think because when this comes out, I'll be fine. But we're looking into also a Sky TV channel as well, which we might only be on at like premium times with certain promotions getting some exposure. So that'd be another good boost.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be awesome. And also it gives you that new audience, doesn't it? It gives you that audience that, I guess sort of, you think about it, the sort of millennial generation, that generation isn't really watching as much TV, but then that older audience that is still watching TV a lot gets that experience that then they probably, I imagine, you probably don't get as much on Powered4, because I imagine it's quite a younger audience that subscribes.
Yeah, it's just a different market to bring out. Again, a lot of people said, would you go into doing what the old wrestling channel used to do? And I was like, I loved the wrestling channel when it first come out, but then it's kind of like a WWE network. It's like sometimes these things they have, when you first get it, you're like a kid in a sweet shop. You're like, oh my God, all this great stuff. But reality sets in and life sets in sometimes with work and everything else. You're like, okay, you can't expect people to sit down and just be watching it 24/7. And too much is never a good thing. So that's why we've been very selective with just certain times and sort of finding the niche times in terms of like a weekend and maybe a weeknight as well, but where we can show either a certain event or different kind of matches from different promotions that people necessarily see, which is great exposure for them as well and us. So I think things like that. But in all honesty, mate, just keeping it going, keep growing. That's all we want, really.
Yeah.
A platform, and who knows what we'll be.
Awesome. And then I'm going to put you on the spot again. I'm going to throw out a wild hypothetical.
Go on.
So obviously you mentioned, wanting to sort of like run more of your own things potentially in the future at some point down the line.
Sure.
So if I would say to you, obviously just indie wrestlers, no signed wrestlers. If I would say to you, like, money's no object, you can go out and you can pick one, you can book one dream match for like a half-hour feature on Powered4 involving indie wrestlers. Doesn't have to be British, can be American, can be Australian, wherever. What match would you book? Who would you book?
Oh, blimey, you put me on the spot here now. You've taken this one out. Man, that is so many great talents. Do you know what? Because I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to go, kind of like old school versus new school to dictate the future in some regards. I'm gonna give. If we got half hour, let's do an Iron Man match, 30-minute Iron Man match, and I'm going to go. Can we say Will Ospreay?
Yeah,
Like, even he's New Japan, but like
that's
he's very
true.
much on our independence.
Now, go on. Let's not say Ospreay because he is signed with New Japan. Let's not say Ospreay because he is signed.
Now I've got to change my mind again. Well, I'm gonna say one guy I'm gonna put in is Jody Fleisch, just because, and that guy never seems to age either. Since I've known him, he's looking better than ever. I remember people back saying then he shouldn't be doing the things he's doing, and I'm like, he's still doing them.
Yeah, now he definitely shouldn't. No.
Jody Fleisch, my goodness. I'm going to say Jody Fleisch, and I'm going to say Chris Ridgway. That'll be a match. But, there's tons of matches. I can't. And just to show some diversity on this, I'm going to also say Chantel Jordan. I'd really like to see her with somebody like Jordan Grace or something from Impact. That'd be fantastic, But yeah.
Yeah,
Just two. I've probably got a whole list. I'd love to book a whole card.
No, but you mentioned Chantal as well when I said the wrestlers who have had a great year, and she's one that's just come on. I can't imagine it's going to be long before she's getting those matches because
so young as well. Yeah, but already very experienced, and obviously she's got that MMA background as well, which will only enhance everything. But yeah, her future's very, very bright at the moment. Was she only 18?
Yeah.
Is she at the moment?
Yeah,
it's crazy. So it seems like she's been about forever. So if you think by the time she's 21, another 3 years. Sky's the limit. I'm pretty sure she'll get a choice of where to go in the end.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be shocked if not. And that's another thing as well. Again, like in terms of just closing this up, we spoke to a lot of wrestlers. We spoke to Alexis Falcon recently, and she said that obviously it is a controversial view, but she said that the NXT UK is the best thing that's happened for the scene because although so many great talents have gone, it's giving those guys who wouldn't have got a push otherwise, that push that they wanted, that they push they deserve. And if you look at the Brit Rest scene now coming out of lockdown, there's so many younger talents, like you said, like Chantal, 18 to say 22, 23, who are they've got years of experience and they're really crushing it at the minute.
Yeah, I'm kind of look, when NXT UK first come around, everyone was like, that's it, they've killed it. And, at the time we had the World of Sport on ITV was going on at the same time, if you remember. I think that was kind of why they sped up the process for NXT UK in a way. And I remember people going mad and it's going to kill it and all the rest of it, but it really hasn't. I think it's only helped. Whether you like the NXT UK product or not is another thing altogether. But in reality, it has only helped the scene. I mean, it really has. And look, regardless of what you think about WWE or anything else, they're still to this day the biggest dog in terms of their marketing machine and people that know them. They're not just within that British wrestling circle as a fan. It's a little bit different there, but on the bigger global scale, WWE is the power. So I only think it's helped it. I really do. And like you say, like Alexis mentioned on your interview, it's I think it really has. I think it's given more people more time, more opportunities to fill those voids and become the next big star. And what's interesting, I think what we'll see in a few years' time as well is where there's more money to be made now with the independent scene is that you'll see fewer wrestlers probably having a little bit more pull in terms of the negotiations and even to the point of saying no to a point. And, I'll keep my name and I can still keep my name this way because, again, 20 years ago, we didn't have social media, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have, video on demands like we've got now. Everything was television. So independent wrestling, unless you was on a TV channel, no one's seen. Whereas that's changed now a whole hell of a lot. And we mentioned Will earlier, but he's a great example of that. He's not been in AEW or WWE, but his name has basically been him going to Japan. But he was only a junior at the beginning. Now you look at him, and he's very established. And there's been lots of guys like that. I mean, that haven't gone through that process. Kenny Omega would be another one. That again, you don't quite necessarily need to jump to WWE straight away or AEW. So yeah, it's kind of interesting times. I think as long as the money's there in independent wrestling, because people are making more money than ever. In not in terms of one-off payments, but in terms of spread around with the amount of work that's going on. I think you've got a good option to sort of say no, not now, and I'll do it a couple of years down the line. But yeah, I do think you've got a little bit more pull. For sure,
absolutely. Well, John, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and chat to us today. It's been lovely having you on and talking about Powered and getting to know what you're all about.
Absolutely, you've been fantastic.
I'm glad you've enjoyed it. We always end by, and we'll do it exactly the same here, we always give our wrestlers a bit of promo time at the end, so we've got to do the same for you. So if anyone watches this and is thinking about subscribing to Powered4 or checking out what you guys do, why should they do that? Why is Powered4 the thing they should check out?
Well, literally, just I'm not going to sell you a load of gaga like you see a lot of these other people doing on sales things. That's not my stick. But I'll tell you as a fan, and that's basically what I am. All I ever wanted was a place where I could go and watch British wrestling. And as I said, it is kind of the Netflix of British wrestling. It's one subscription for everything. You're not just getting one promotion. You're getting all the promotions with all the archives. That includes promotions like 1PW that have got some real gems, hidden gems in their archives with the likes of Bryan Danielson and AJ Styles, and just a real random bunch of promotions all working together, which was quite crazy back then in the UK. And then, of course, we've got FNW, TNT Extreme Wrestling, Catch Pro Wrestling, DNA, RCWA, just loads and loads of promotions. But on top of that, if you're not sort of sold on that, go over. There are free content to watch as well. One in particular I will give recommendation to. It's absolutely free to go and see. So all you have to do is go over and check it out, which is called Clash Pro Wrestling. They did about 10 shows. And the reason I like it is because, it was kind of like the coming out party for a lot of the pretty deadly guys, Cara Noir, very early on stuff. So you see them growing as performers and just adding little bits and pieces to their entrances and stuff like that. But what's great about it is by the 10th show, they knew that was going to be the end. So they really put a bookend on everything you've seen all the way through. So it's kind of one of those ones where it's like you're watching it as a TV show, and you're getting payoffs to it. Like you're getting rewarded for watching episode 1 and 3, and that's why that happened. So it's very, very good to watch in that sense. That's a great recommendation. Also, I'd love to now put out, use the code GRAPPLE, help our friend out here, because by doing that, you'll give him a kickback, a nice kickback, and also give you the opportunity to see Kapow for free. So use the code GRAPPLE, all capitals, when you sign, and you'll get a whole month free. And also you'll be supporting this fantastic show.